That's great. So, looks good. I think we all sorted. Not sure why it kind of messed up the live stream here, but that happens for some reason sometimes with YouTube. So let's go into those questions and let's do an AMA here. Great. So the questions are ranked. AMA, any kind of questions, no off limits. Now let's go in. Anonymous is asking, what do you think about the IBM-based blockchain, IBM based on blockchain and crypto? So I think I'm not the biggest fan of permissioned blockchains, simply because obviously there's always a centralized party in there. There has to be some central party that is in control. It kind of defeats always a bit the purpose on what this could mean or how decentralized the system is. Still, I'm a big fan if a large company or when a large company supports blockchain. Even though it might not be 100% the right track from the start, but I still think, yeah, it's always a good move. So that's also why I like when JP Morgan goes into cryptocurrencies, even though it's not really a cryptocurrency, but I still think it puts attention and brings people into the space. The same with Facebook and so on. So I never understand why people are always making fun of these companies. I think we should support every kind of initiative there. Yeah, to really kind of support this. And then at the end, it's always about educating people for them to understand. Okay, great. I understand what a permission blockchain is, what an open blockchain is. I think that's always very important. Great question. Next question. Julian, what do you think about the open source project Viacoin? I have no opinion on it. I just don't know enough about it. Julian, what do you typically eat in a day? If I have a normal diet, if I want to say it, so I'm in the US right now in San Francisco, staying with some friends here. My diet here is shit. I am definitely not eating what I should be eating and what I'm normally eating. Normally I'm trying to eat very little carb, very little sugar. I try to, I don't eat much red meat. I eat fish. I'm definitely not a vegetarian, but for some reason I did an immunologic test. I can't eat eggs. I had a very bad scalp from eating eggs, and so I kind of dropped the eggs, and that kind of, for some weird reason, I don't know why, helped my scalp. We tried everything for years, and it was the eggs. So I can't eat eggs. I love eggs, but I can't eat them. And other than that, I try to eat a lot of veggies. I eat a lot of salads. I try, generally I have a late breakfast, probably at 10 a.m. or something, and I have early dinner. And I normally eat 2 to 3 meals a day. I don't watch my calories too much. I do a little, but I don't watch too much. To me, it's mostly that I eat. I don't eat fried stuff. I try to eat a lot of calorie or nutritionist dense foods. I think that's always important. And I'm a very scientific eater, if you want to call it this way. I try to see good nutrition. Yes, I like the taste, but to me, it's really about, that's the fuel that I need to get into my body to have maximum energy. So that's what I typically eat. I eat tuna, I eat fish, yeah, and then I cheat every once in a while. I love chocolate, so I eat that. And now yesterday we had burger with fries. So yes, I know, shame on me, but still, that's kind of the treat, and I like this. And yeah, that's okay. I'm flying back to Singapore on Monday, and then yeah, it is going to be a very stringent kind of diet, if you want to call it. For me, the energy output is always the most important. That's how I reflect. How do I feel about all this, and how do I reflect? So, and that's really important for me. Great. Next question, John. What happens to the Bitcoin price when we get into an economic recession? Interesting question. I think if the recession doesn't happen overnight, so I think if it's not like a crash where suddenly all the liquidity gets sucked out of the market, but let's say the recession is a step-by-step downturn, and I kind of bounced this idea with many experts, many people that are really, really smart, and everyone kind of agrees there. If the recession is just like a gradual downturn, then probably Bitcoin can thrive, especially as a safer store of something, even though today it might not be the best store of value, but I think most people agree that it's a very independent store of value. I think that could be very powerful. And then I think especially when there's, again, the upturn of the economy, I think Bitcoin could thrive as one of the first or one of the fastest. That's why I've always told people be very careful at the moment. I think stocks, real estate, bonds might be a bit overvalued, right? Be a bit careful if you have a lot of exposure into those asset classes. I would really look for precious metals right now. I would really look into cryptocurrencies right now. I think they're rather undervalued, which doesn't mean that I would go and put 100% into crypto. I would stay in the single digits of percentages. Same with the precious metals. I wouldn't put more than, I don't know, 7, 8% into precious metals. I wouldn't put more into crypto. But I think it's a good time right now, if you have very little exposure to those, to kind of put a bit more in there and just be a bit careful in what's happening with your real estate, what's happening with stocks, securities, and so on. I think, yeah, but it's quite interesting in this sense. Next question. What are your plans for the future, private or personal and business? Personal, Bettina and myself, my wife, we just extended our apartment in Singapore. We're definitely going to stay a bit longer in Singapore. No plans at the moment in moving. We really like the city. We have so many great friends there. So at the moment, we definitely want to stay there. Kids, definitely somewhere on our radar. If Bettina would tell me tomorrow, or if Bettina told me tomorrow that she's pregnant, I would definitely be happy. But if she didn't tell me tomorrow and it takes a little bit longer, I'm also absolutely happy. So it's not like I'm not stressed out about it. But it's definitely not something where I'm like, oh no, like what a horrible timing. But no stress about it. And so that's kind of personal like situation. Business-wise, so what's going to happen is over the next couple of weeks and months, I'll definitely be announcing a couple of advisories that I'm going to be doing all over the place. Some in blockchain, cryptocurrencies, some not blockchain, some in completely different areas. Just startups where my strengths and my skills that I've kind of gathered over the last 10 years can really help. And I will put this on the website on julianhosp.com to make it very, very, very clear and transparent for everyone that these are projects that Julian is involved. So you can look this up and you can always see, I don't know, if I announce something, what's happening. I want to be very, very transparent about this to make sure that there's no conflict of interest whatsoever. At the moment, I haven't signed anything, didn't start anything. So at the moment, I'm completely independent there. So that's definitely going to happen. And then I definitely want to start my own project again. Haven't fully made up my mind what space this is going to be in. It's definitely going to happen in blockchain, but no definite kind of situation. I'm meeting a couple of potential co-founders next week that I have talked to a lot over the last couple of weeks and months, people that I've known for years. And yeah, so let's see what's possible there. And I would definitely keep you up to date. What's probably going to happen is as soon as I kind of make up my mind, I will, and it's the same kind of process, I really need to get down to business, make the rubber meet the road. I will probably kind of retract a bit from social media. I will still be posting. I won't do lives anymore. I will just do pre-recorded videos. I won't do much interaction because I really need to work and I really need to get stuff done. And yeah, normally I do this for a couple of weeks, depending on how long it takes to really get stuff going. Probably need to do a lot of calls, need to kind of do a lot of biz dev, get the project line going, work with the other team, help as much as I can on the technical side, on the coding and so on. And yeah, let's see how that's going to turn out until we have an MVP, a minimal viable prototype out to present to the public. And or maybe even a bit earlier talk about what we're doing to kind of get the attention from people on what's happening. So that's kind of the plan there. So you can kind of expect that this is probably going to happen in April. I kind of use those 2 months right now, January, like mid-January till now, mid-March, kind of reset a bit, meet some really good friends and people in Miami and San Francisco, all around the world. Yeah, to kind of really gather myself, re-energize, reset, and trust me, I'm so energetic right now. I could work all day. I'm really excited about getting stuff going. I think that's very, very important. Yeah, and so I needed those 2.5 months, if you want to call it. And yeah, just kind of get some distance and yeah, be very optimistic. I think I am. And so that's kind of personal business. Hope that answers that. Next question from Tom Heats. How do you keep calm during important speeches? What are your techniques? How was it like at the beginning? So I share this story actually whenever people ask me. So as you remember, so I've done my very first presentations in front of very small groups was, let's put a school aside or university aside, but was when I was actually working as a medical assistant and I was a tutor and I was teaching people well, anatomy. So I helped them like prepare muscles and nerves on corpses. And I did this because for me, I always wanted to become a trauma surgeon. And so I thought it makes the most sense if I understand the human body better than anyone else. And so I wanted to really get good in this. And I understood the best teachers are the best students are teachers. Because if you can teach something, you actually, you really, well, if you learn something and if you teach something, you become the best student yourself. And so that's when I did it, when I started with this. And there I learned this concept of always making stuff very practical and kind of putting something into perspective. And so I'll give you an example. I think most other teachers, and I was not an official professor, but I was like on a similar level, just I didn't have a pay grade and I didn't have the kind of degree, but I was still teaching groups of students. And I realized very early that the most important thing, especially with anatomy, is to put this into a practical example. So it's very boring to teach students, like let's use muscles as an example. In muscles, the typical, there's always 4 things you need to learn about a muscle. It's the origin, it's where the muscle inserts, it's the function of the muscle, and it's the nerve that kind of stimulates that muscle, right? So it's those 4 things. And it's a really boring kind of lesson because all you're doing is you have to memorize these things, and it's really boring. And so as soon as you put this into some context, for example, into sports, into injuries, into any kind of diseases, if you put a story around it, suddenly people can memorize this like crazy. And so my group was always the best group of the entire class. And there was like hundreds of students, right? And I had like maybe 10, 20 in my group. And that was simply because for me, it was just really important to talk about all these different muscles. So we talked about differences in the biceps, right? Biceps brachii. You have basically 2 biceps muscles, and how would they work, and what is relevant there? What are the different kind of nerves, and how does this, for example, translate into certain kind of diseases? So you bring a practical approach to that. And that was in small groups. And then later on, in kitesurfing, I had exactly the same thing. When I became a professional kitesurfer, I had to teach people how these tricks work, and then you have to focus on the simple things. And then over time, it became larger and larger audiences. And so what I just learned, and these are the most important techniques, is if you keep things simple, it's very easy for you to kind of not lose track during a presentation. I think many, many people want to make things really complicated. And I try always to do the opposite. I try to simple things down. The other thing is people love stories. Stories are some of the most important kind of tools in order to bring across concepts. And I think that's very important. And then, and then during a presentation, you always want to have your fixed kind of components. So for example, for me, this means I have 2 different openings. 2 different openings, this is how I open every presentation. And you can watch all my keynotes, you will see, oh, there he opens with this opening, or oh, that's how he opens there. And I'm not going to give away the openings, that's maybe your Sherlock Holmes kind of style to kind of pick these things up. And I learned this from many, many other speakers that I talk to that I personally feel are some of the best speakers in the world. And I could just only look up to and I'm like, wow, how can they be so awesome? But kind of have your fixed points in there and then try to stay flexible in between. Now, how did I get good at presenting or at keynotes? By being shitty for so long. And I really mean this. I still remember I was in Hong Kong and I had to give a small talk. And it was like maybe, I don't know, 30 people. And I had this friend from France. And he was in this talk. And then after the talk, he came to me and he said, Julian, and he had this really French accent. He said, Julian, this was the worst talk I've ever heard in my entire life. Please, don't do this to my ears again. Don't ever speak in front of an audience. And it was such a reminder to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so crappy. How can I be so crappy? And it was this inspiration of, hey, I need to get really good at this. And then with every talk, I asked and I said, hey, what can I do better? And I'm a perfectionist on this. And even now, I give you an example at South by Southwest. After the keynote, people came to me and they're like, wow, Julian, this was such a great keynote. And I really appreciate that. I really love that praise, right? Don't get me wrong. But then for me, what's always important is I really reflect on this could be a small thing. This could be a small thing. And I sit down and actually write this down after every keynote. And I reflect on it. And I'm like, this slide was not spot on. Here, my transition was not good. Here, I remember I felt that I was losing the audience slightly. And I feel that. And so I'm like, okay, I need to change this a bit. And so at the end, I know I've probably given talks in front of small audience, large audiences for the last, 15 years. So it just comes with practice. And I don't know, I can only imagine how people who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, I mean, they must be outstanding, right? And I still get nervous, but for me, mostly it's excitement. I try to channel it into excitement, and that always kind of helps, in my opinion, a bit. So this is kind of my 2 cents on that. I hope, Tom, that helps you. Next question: in which field in the area of computer science are the ones with the greatest potential from your perspective? So Tim, I think, I personally think, right, and this is always an interesting historic kind of approach. Most jobs, if you look at it, they come in waves. So that means, at the moment, the job of a software engineer, a computer scientist, they're like the highest regarded, and this has been probably over the past 20 years. So if you were a computer scientist or an engineer over the past 25 years, I think you make shit tons of money, and you are being searched by everyone. And I personally think that peak is going to actually go away again. I think we're going to see a lot of AI coming in who can take over certain jobs of computer scientists and software engineers. And I really think that's going to be a massive disruption to the entire ecosystem. So what I think is actually going to happen, and that's going to be important, is I think until these algorithms cannot just code, but until they can actually bring architecture and structure to a system, that's going to take some time. So what I would really focus on as either as a CS or a software engineer is focus on architecture and really understand like the structure of a program and how to do things as clean and as simple as possible. And so that's what I would focus on a grand scheme of things. Now, the next step from there is computer science, software engineering is such a broad spectrum. So that's just the grand scheme. So I would really focus on architecture, on structure, on being very, very, very good on high-level things where you need creativity and so on, because I think the actual execution of writing the code, I really believe that AI is going to be quicker and faster than many others, than many humans. But so then I would go and I would ask myself, what is the best combinations of computer science or software engineering with something else? And that depends on what other interests you have. So I would probably go into and do, I don't know, biotech or any kind of med tech, right? Medicine, I think, longevity, so many interesting fields in this space, right? So I think that's going to be a killer, like a killer application. Another one is definitely going to be robotics. Like robotics is going to be humongous, right? And dealing with all these things in the future, and if you can combine those, man, you're going to be in such high demand. Like I think over the next 30 years, if you want to have a guaranteed job and have a guaranteed 6-figure, maybe even 7-figure income a year, like I'm talking about millions of dollars of income a year, go into the field of robotics and computer science. And this is the thing. If you're watching this right now and you're like, man, I have nothing of that, right? I'm not sure. I understand finance. I'm an accountant, for example, or nothing bad about accounting. I'm just saying. Or I'm in a completely different field. So what? You can learn how to code, you can learn how to do computer science, you can learn everything there is about robotics. It's probably going to take you maybe 2 or 3 years, and yeah, you need to grind through all this, but guess what? Afterwards, you can be excellent in these fields, and it doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, it doesn't matter. You will have such an easy way coming in, you just need to grind it, and you really need to learn, and over time, you're going to get the experience. Some of the best people that I've ever worked with, they didn't study computer science or software engineering in university. They didn't. They're self-taught. Many people ask me, they said, hey, Julian, how can you call yourself a blockchain expert? You didn't study cryptography. You didn't study CS. You didn't study economics. Yeah, but so what? Why does a university degree count as anything more valuable than anything that's self-taught? And in my opinion, it doesn't at all. So my point is, if you really teach yourself and you get the experience, you're probably so much more valuable than anyone that just goes to university, sits there, gets their content in, but at the end has no practical experience. So that would be the stuff that I would do. Focus on really on large scale, on structure, on conceptual thinking. That's very, very difficult many times, especially for AI. Actually writing code, AI can be quite strong if it has certain parameters. And then if you try to combine this with certain fields, I think medicine, huge, right? People want to live longer. I think it's a massive field. Robotics, definitely something that's going to be humongous. And I think there's many, many other areas that I'm probably forgetting right now that are just really on a hype. I mean, look at all the self-driving cars. I think all the stuff with machine learning. But again, I think also in machine learning, what's going to happen is all the AI is going to be very, very strong on writing the actual code, but it needs people more from a high level who can actually instruct and run these executions. So I think that's going to be interesting, and you should never forget. Great. Next question, again by Tim. By the way, yeah, I hope Bettina or Ruben or Ewald, you can post the question link in. If you don't have a question yourself, please upvote the questions that you want me to answer. I will really go through Slido by the most upvoted questions because obviously this is what interests you the most, and I'll just go from top to bottom. So another question from Tim: would you focus on a big startup idea when starting a business? I'm thinking about starting small ideas to get experience first and tackle bigger ideas later. That's a really, really, really fantastic question. So what I would do is this, and I'm trying to teach this all the time over and over again. The most interesting thing is, if you have this huge vision at the back, right, and you have this big, big, big idea, this big dream, but you manage to break it down into something that you could do in the next year or two. And I think many people don't combine those two. They either have something where they work on something for the next year or two, and then they're kind of lost. And when they try to raise money, or when they try to attract customers, or they try to attract other coworkers, they struggle to do so because people sit there and are like, yeah, okay, this is like a nice idea right now, but so what's that, like, that's going to work for the next year, but what about afterwards? And then they really struggle. And then on the other hand, you have people who come in with this really humongous idea, but they don't know the first steps. They don't know the first 3 years. And that's also really bad, because then, again, you struggle raising funds. You're going to get no customers. You really struggle attracting team members, because you sit there and you're like, they all sit there and they're like, I cannot relate to what you're trying to explain to me. I don't have the vision, or maybe this is going to happen in 15 years, but what's going to happen right now? And so what I think is, if you look at the most successful companies out there, the most successful entrepreneurs, the big thinkers, they manage to have this big vision at the end, but they have the first step, they have the next step. And I think that's the trick, that's the key, right? So if you look at Uber, for example, Uber has, and the reason I know this, I spoke to, actually I know one of the first top 20 employees of Uber. And what is very interesting is, and he actually led all of Asia Pacific until Asia Pacific was bought out by Grab. What was very interesting to me was when he described the big vision of Uber, and the big vision of Uber is to be the FTP protocol for the real world, right? So it's such a simple kind of vision or mission statement, if you want to call it. So what does this mean? You want to be the protocol that transports stuff, like not information as FTP does, TCP/IP, sorry, not FTP, it's a TCP/IP protocol for the real world. And so they don't transport information, they want to transfer goods, people, and so on in the real world. But if they would come out with this at the very, very beginning, people are like, what a stupid idea. Like, how would this ever work, right? Like, we're struggling with so many other things. So they broke it down and they just said, you know what, let's start with such a small idea. And the smallest idea they came out with was, let's have these VIP black cars that people can book through an app. And suddenly everyone could understand, okay, I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I understand the concept. The concept is, sure, I need a black car driver that drives this nice limousine, and it's VIP, and I understand that there's going to be surcharge because it's more expensive than a cab. Fantastic. Let me book this and let me use this through an app. I'm not sure if it works, but I can at least understand how it works. And so from there, then they go and say, next step, let's use different kind of cars. Let's not only go high end, but let's also do it as cheap as possible. Let's use motorcycles. And suddenly today, after 10 years, people are like, yeah, I could see that Uber is probably going to have self-driving cars at some point. Right? And so then you suddenly start thinking further, and then probably in 5 or 6 years, when self-driving cars suddenly start to take over, you're like, oh yeah, I can totally understand the TCP/IP protocol of the real world. So, whoa, this is like, and this is, I think, the trick to everything there. So my answer to you, as like after elaborating a bit longer, is have the big vision at the end and start with the small idea first. I think that's the key answer to that. Great question, Tim. Bob asks, what is the best way of investing into blockchain technology in general and not in a specific coin? Bob, that's the golden question. I think that would be the question. I talk about this in my book, Cryptocurrencies Explained Simply, also in Blockchain 2.0 that just came out in English. I talk about this. If I could do exactly that, I would put all my money into it, and I would take a loan as much as the bank would give me and pour it in there, because I know I would be winning. The problem, just like with the internet, is that the blockchain is a concept, is a protocol. It's nothing else than a concept or an idea of, instead of storing information in one place, or controlling the information in one place, it gets stored all over the place, and there's a method in how this information is organized and structured so that there's no conflict of interest, conflict of information. And so I just haven't found any vehicle to being able to invest into the entire technology. If someone ever found out the solution, that would be fantastic. Maybe the way is to build an ETF over the largest 100 coins. I'm not sure, because it could be that all of the top 100 coins that they fail. I don't think so that all of them will fail, but it could be, right? So yeah, I don't have a good answer in how to do it. I'm searching for it still today. My solution so far has been that I invest into the largest coins that for me are the most trustworthy and where I see adoption, where I see usage of it. And then obviously fingers crossed that I hope that the network effects and great developers and use cases will kind of support that and foster growth. Fantastic question. I don't have a better answer than that. Next question comes from Carlos. What did you learn from the dropout at 10x? What will you do different so it doesn't happen again? Amazing question. So I thought about this actually a lot. I have some answers that I am not allowed to give you. That is just because me and my co-founders agreed that there are certain things that I will not talk about. And so there are certain things that I'm not allowed to talk to you about. But so I want to talk some lessons learned, right? But there's some other lessons that I definitely want to share with you. One lesson is I have some mentors who shared with me certain concerns years ago when they kind of got to know the team and when they kind of got to know the entire company, if you want to call it, without being too specific, right? Keeping it a bit vague. And they were very, very specific about challenges that could happen that I discounted, that I thought never ever, like these challenges could never pop up. And I kind of wrote them off. And they were very, very clear on these problems and challenges. And these are people that are, first of all, uber rich. I think we all would love to have this kind of money. They are very, very seasoned entrepreneurs and business people. They've seen it all. They've seen startups that fail, startups that become unicorns. They have been in business for a long, 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 long time. And they're really, really good at reading people, understanding people, because they have seen so many people. They have seen people that are very honest, very legit. They have seen people that are scammers, that rip other people off. They have seen it all. And so it was just really, really interesting for me to kind of understand, why did I have these people who came to me with certain concerns and I would trust them in anything? And in this, just because I personally obviously was blinded, I was in a survivorship bias. I was in this bias and I didn't fully listen to them. So I think that is the very first lesson there. That even though I teach and preach how important it is, just take a step and look around and reflect stuff from a neutral perspective, that sometimes, and I think that's the hard part, when it affects you yourself, you sometimes don't manage to do that. And it's like always, right? I always say the same thing. It's not the car that you see coming that kills you. It's the car you don't see coming that kills you. And it's the same thing there. I think always the same thing. I just have to be careful sharing some lessons and understand how much would I be revealing that I wouldn't want to reveal. Let's leave it at that for now. I think that's a really important lesson. If you have people that, let's leave it at that. I think everything else would be thin ice. I think if you have people that you really trust and that you really think they really want the best for you, these are people that you consider your mentors, people that you know they're going to cheer you up when you need it and they're going to be very cautious when you need it. If you have people like that, listen. I think that's really important. Maybe something else is, and I think I mentioned this a couple of times, one thing that over the last 2 months I've really seen was, who are my real friends? Who are friends that that don't only show up when stuff is awesome and you're ready to party? Who are the people when you're down and you're emotionally really destroyed and you feel like, man, you feel there's no future, or man, you don't know what to do next and you're lost? Who call you? I mean, my very best friend, Dennis, right, who was the best man at my wedding, he has his own business challenges, right? Like everyone, and he just says, you know, screw it, I'm gonna come to Singapore. I'll sit down with you for a couple of days. We'll discuss stuff through. Let me know what you need. Like, I'll do anything for you, right? I had so many people. Like, it was so interesting. I invited. We had really nice wedding, Bettina and I had quite a lot of friends there, people who I thought that were friends, and it was interesting to see, right? People that were actually at one of your most important days in your life. Interesting to see who should have not invited. Who are the people who actually are the knife stabbers that I should have actually realized that they were not there, that they shouldn't have been there. And yeah, what was very interesting, Bettina took this really, really personal then afterwards, because it became very clear to us some of the closest people actually were became your worst enemy, right? And so she actually took all the effort, and huge kudos to her. She took all his effort and she completely had pictures edited, removed all these people out of the photos, even out of the video, right? Out of the wedding video, to make sure that when we look at these memories, that we only have people on these pictures and videos where we know these are the people who, during the good times, are there for you, but more important, during the hard times. Yeah, so she really invested a lot of energy and time over those past weeks in kind of making sure that we are not only surrounded physically by wonderful people, but also on such memories. Yeah, I think definitely. So that was something that was very, very powerful to me to see. People who called me and they're like, Julian, I don't care what's in the press. I know exactly what's true. Do you need anything? Do you need any help? That was like really, really powerful. And I think the learning there is do the same thing to these people that obviously are there for you. Be there for them when they have hard times. I think huge lesson. Yeah, hope that gives you at least a little bit without me kind of violating any kind of agreements or promises. Anonymous asks, how can we reduce global warming with the help of blockchain technology? I think the very first, there's a couple of things. Obviously, transparency can always be a good solution. Have, I don't know, some global warming, some kind of credit system that works on a global scale. CO2 credits and so on. So I think it would be interesting to see this without having the chance of this stuff being manipulated. Obviously, the other thing is finding a way how you can remove all the need for a lot of energy in a blockchain. Or to create consensus in a blockchain without losing all the power of the consensus mechanism. So I think a big misunderstanding is that you could just remove all the energy usage for Bitcoin and just replace it with something and you would have the same kind of security. And that's not true. One of the reasons why Bitcoin is so secure is because it needs so much energy. And redoing that is so expensive that's why Bitcoin is so secure. So the great kind of holy grail would be to find something that allows for the same kind of risk-reward ratio as proof of work has with mining, and not having to use all this electricity. I think that would be a really good solution. I think so far no one has this holy grail, but I think it would be interesting to see what this could be. Definitely an interesting concept to go there. What advice would you give young businesses when setting up a startup? My advice would be, it's all about the team. It's all about the team. That's the key thing, how it starts. You need to have people who complement each other. You need to have people who can stay with each other during good, but also during the hard times. And you need to have, complementing strength. You shouldn't have agreement all the time. That's quite dangerous. You need to have some disagreement. You shouldn't have too much arguments, obviously, because then nothing gets done. I think team. Second thing, try to solve a problem. Don't try to create a problem for your solution, but create a solution for a problem. This is a humongous problem that most people don't do wrong. You can watch my talk at South by Southwest. I always give this example with a calculation, what times what equals 91. And so basically you have the solution called 91, and now people need to find the problem, right? They need to find what's something times something to get to 91. It's actually a cryptographic problem because there's only one solution if you remove the number 1 out of the equation, because it's 2 prime numbers that you multiply with each other. And so the lesson of this is it's really difficult to find such a simple problem to the solution 91. But if I told you what's 7 times 13, And then, well, you would still need to think a little bit because it's not the most common mathematical question, 7 times 13. But you could do it in your head, and it takes you maybe a couple of seconds, and then you're like, oh, that's 91. So the difference is there. Here you have a problem, 7 times 91, and you need to find a solution to it. And so you could say the 7 is kind of the problem out there, the 13 are all the competitors that are already out there, and all you need to have is you need to have a fitting solution now. And that's the main thing that I would recommend. I think few blockchain companies do this. Few blockchain companies only get started to raise money. You see this with the kind of advisors they have. All they care about is they want to have advisors to create attention to raise funds. And they don't solve a problem. To me, this is such a massive issue in the entire blockchain space. I think it's really about solving a problem. Do this. I think then you're going to win, and do this with a great team. I think this is a really good start. And then the third thing, obviously, is always execution. I think a young business really focus on the execution then. Ideas are not worth much. Ideas with a team are also not worth much. But execution of a great idea to a really relevant solution, problem with a great team, man, this can be a unicorn, a multi-billion-dollar business. So that would be my recommendation. What do you think of, where did Elon go? Oh, no, something else jumped. Hey, Julian, would you recommend a PhD degree for a leading position in the economy as a CEO or CFO? Wondering if it's worth necessary. What's your experience? So I don't think it's, like, if you want to get a PhD degree just for the sake of it, I think it's absolutely useless. Like, I think it's worthless. If you like to study this part anyways, and you are interested in it, then of course it helps. So, like, quick side story, right? People always ask me, Julian, why do you focus on your doctor's title so much? Why do you have it on your book? Why do you post this somewhere? Why do you focus on it? So, 3 reasons. Three kind of outcomes. First outcome, majority of the people, they don't care, right? They're like, who cares, right? Irrelevant. Great, let's put those aside. No effect. Wouldn't change if I had Dr. Julian Hosp or Julian Hosp. Doesn't matter, right? So that's the first group. Let's put those away. The second group are those that are like, wow, cool, let me see this. Okay, this is a doctor, let me read into this. Great. So I have an advantage over everyone else in this kind of sector. And they start looking because of that. And at the end, that's what I want. I want them to just take a look. Give me an honest chance. At the end, they need to decide over the product, but they at least start to look. And to me, that's the very first thing that I want there. And then the third option is that people see this and they get turned off. And they're like, huh, a doctor does this. How stupid is this? Great. But in this case, I have the second group. And the second group, most of the time, is way larger than the group who goes and says, how stupid is this? Now, they're the loudest group. You will always have those people who are going to be complaining. They're going to be the one who give me a book review and say, oh, your doctor title is not even in mathematics. Your doctor title is not in cryptography. Yeah, I don't give a shit. The point is, you are the loud minority. But there's going to be a large group who at least gives me a chance to take a look. So if this is, and I would have not, so seriously, I would have not gone and create and get my doctor's title only for this. Never ever. I got my doctor's title because I was seriously interested, and I still am, in medicine, and I really care about this field. But so today, the reason I use it now is because I know how people tick. I know how to stand out, what it needs in this case. And this is such a big difference. I think many people then are scared about this loud minority, and they're like, oh, no, I'm not allowed to do this. I shouldn't be doing this. I tell you, the people that you look up to, all out there, they're not scared of this loud minority. They understand if they wouldn't do it, they would have a loud minority that tells everyone how insignificant you are, and they have a large majority who just doesn't care. So you're missing the second part, and the second part is who suddenly pays attention. And obviously, hopefully, people pay attention about things that I do for many other reasons, not because of my doctor title. But I need to kind of use every little tool in the toolbox, because otherwise, in this noisy world, it's very, very difficult. And so I try to do a lot of things. But so I just want to kind of explain that. So if I kind of circle around there, I would not get a PhD just to get a PhD. I didn't do it. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend that. And honestly, in today's world, I've never hired someone because of a title. I have maybe paid attention to someone because they had an MBA or they had a doctor or a PhD. I did. But then at the end, it's always about the quality of the product, right? That's at the end that always matters. So someone that has an MBA but then there's nothing afterwards. I'm like, oh, okay, you're just an MBA, you got your MBA, great job, you have no work experience, you have not done anything, please get some work experience, afterwards I can hire you. But in the other case, I've hired a lot of people who have 0 degrees, nothing. They're some of the best people that I met. And just their product is really great. Obviously, it's tougher to stand out this way. I'm kind of, you can be very honest with this, but at the end, the product is what counts. Hope that answers that. What do you think of Elon Musk? I think he does a lot of things really well. I think he does a few things not so well. To me, I'm okay with him not doing everything perfect, simply because no one is perfect. I really think he is a master attention creator, and I think that's so important in today's world. I think he mastered that. I think that's all he cares about in a lot of things he does. Sometimes he overdoes it, and I think that's when he gets negative flashback. But at the end, I think he's doing a great job when it comes to that. I think he's this uber visionary that I am very impressed with, how far in the future he can structure certain things and how he can break those things down. I am really impressed in all the things he's doing. I have the deepest respect for him, and I'm just someone who can overlook the mistakes or the flaws that he has. I'm not a human being at all, right? That looks for the perfect person. I'm not perfect by far. I've not met a person that's perfect, and I know there's so many people out there who try to point out flaws in people. I'm generally someone who kind of blinds out the flaws. I'm a very optimistic and positive person, and so I look at people, and there's people that I completely don't agree with, right? Some people in politics that I completely don't agree with. Some people, religious leaders that I completely don't agree with. Some entrepreneurs that I completely don't agree with. But I always try to find this 1 or 2 or 3 things that I say, hey, wow, you know, actually that's a quality that obviously is a great quality. And if I can incorporate that, hopefully it makes me a slightly better person. And I think in Elon, I see a lot of great qualities, a lot of great ideas, a lot of great execution. And yeah, I think his critics focus on those 1 or 2 negative things. I don't. They're there. I completely understand that they are there. And I could blind them out. If Elon started a startup and he would call me up, whether I would give him $1 million, I would give him $1 million for his startup. I would not even blink once. I think he's one of the rare entrepreneurs, like he says, that would do everything for his company to succeed. Yeah, that would be my idea there. Can you imagine supporting a crypto open source project? And if so, how can we reach out for a project? I can definitely imagine that via Oliver. The best thing is just simply write to Patricia. Maybe Bettina, can you write Patricia's email in there? Patricia@julianhosp.com. She's going to write it in the chat. I'm definitely interested. Again, for me to be involved in a project, what's the most important thing is I'm not interested in simply helping with fundraising. So that doesn't make there's no interest for me in doing this. For helping a company just to fundraise and they give me 10% of the fundraising, 0 interest, like none at all. Like I don't want to do this. If I want to help a company to raise funds, then I would do it for my own company. So no, and for me, there's unlimited risk in this, right? So unlimited risk, very little upside. So no interest in there. If a company doesn't solve a problem that I could see that this is a problem that's worth solving, also I have no interest in being affiliated with this problem. If a company needs help with branding, I see myself way stronger in branding than in marketing. I also see Elon Musk way strong in branding and not in marketing. Marketing is a very mathematical, very executional thing. I think branding is something completely different. So I'm very strong, I think, in branding, in attention creation. I am very strong on the business side, in biz dev, in the connection kind of side, or in some strategy there, in hiring. These are all things that I'm really, really, really strong in. I'm definitely happy to help there and advise there, for sure. I think my skills in coding and programming, I wish they were a bit better. I definitely am not at par that I would say, yeah, I'm happy to contribute, but my contribution is probably going to be the junior developer on the coding and developing side. Yeah, and I'm happy in helping with fundraising as a whole concept, but it's not like I have so many requests for people who come to me and say, hey, I want to raise $10 million. Can you help me raise 10 million? I give you 2 million out of it. Zero interest, like none. I'm not driven by money, so you can't motivate me that way. I'm way more driven with having an impact, leaving a great legacy, adding value to people, and there's very little value added by helping someone to raise $10 million. Money doesn't solve the problem. There needs to be way more around that. But definitely, so reach out to Patricia at Julianhosp.com. Always very interested to hear. What do you think about Make a DAO? There's just a video that came out. You can check on my YouTube channel where I comment on it. I own a little bit of Make a DAO. I think the concept is very interesting. I met the team, I think 2 years ago in Singapore. I was very critical. I was like, what a silly idea. Like, this is never going to work. I was so sure that if Ether is going to crash, that it's going to wipe out their entire order book, or the entire book, in a sense, that suddenly there would be no backing for the dollar anymore, and DAI would completely crash. Well, what happened, Ether crashed by like 90%, and DAI seems stable as always. So of course it has some fluctuations, but it seems quite stable. So yeah, if the team keeps going well, and if the Ethereum ecosystem stays around, then yeah, I think it could be a very, very interesting project. I own a little bit of Maker, but yeah, wishing the team all the best. I think definitely a great, definitely, obviously doing a lot of things right. But you can watch the video. It's on my YouTube channel, and yeah, I've talked about this quite lengthy. Bcash or Bitcoin Cash. Look, for me, I don't care what you call it. I am not a big fan of the coin. Yeah, I honestly, to me, that hurts so much. Roger Ver, I know him quite well. Very first time I met him, man, this was probably 2000, maybe it was 2014, but I think maybe 2014, 2015. I had such high respect for him because he was such an evangelist for the ecosystem. And yeah, and I met him again in Cyprus last year, and he still has the same kind of passion. Just in my opinion today, and I would tell him this to his face. I think he put his ego over the larger cause, and this is super dangerous. I think this is the most dangerous thing you can do. And yeah, let's hope that he kind of gets to his senses at some point. I doubt it, but I'm not a fan of the coin itself. I think it really lost everything. So yeah, kind of, yeah, my 2 cents on this. PewDiePie or T-Series? Well, I have to kind of support PewDiePie there. So subscribe to PewDiePie. That would be my answer there. Yeah, is an individual contributor, so I think that's important. Do you miss your home country and your job as a doctor? I don't miss Austria. I love going back every once in a while. I think it's always great to be back in the mountains and see my family. I don't miss it. I love going there like once or twice a year for a week. I'm always happy when I get to leave. Austria is such a relaxed and chilled country. But yeah, I love the speed. I'm a very high-paced person. So yeah. Do you miss your job as a doctor? I don't. I talk about the story in several books and several reasons why I left. Mainly it was obviously as a doctor, you're always around sick people. And to me, at some point, there was just too much frustration around that. Yeah, being around sick people all the time. So that's why at some point I didn't. I didn't want to. Yeah, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to really help people and feel good about it. As a doctor, I help people, but I didn't always feel good about it. Next question. 10x lost its face. Kicking you out wasn't a good step. Could you imagine a comeback? Without commenting on certain things, I cannot imagine a comeback. I think too much stuff happened. I would not be open about it. And yeah, I wish them all the best. Hope they're going to do well. For me, I want to have a clear separation. And yeah, let's leave it at that. What are your top 3 favorite third-generation crypto coins? What are third-generation crypto coins? I have no idea, Marco, what are third-generation crypto coins. But so what I can tell you is I love coins that really solve a problem, that really focus on execution, and that get stuff done. So I really love that, and I really try to I really try to find that. In my opinion, there's very few coins out there that actually do this in a great way. And if they say they are decentralized, that they're truly decentralized, and if they're like, hey, you know what, we actually a company and we are going to be centralized, they stay centralized. I think that's a major hurdle at the moment. But I think yeah, that would be very interesting to see, to do this a bit better and work this out. Anonymous asks, can you make a stream with Tricia on how to network? We'll definitely do it. I wrote to her that I had a lot of requests about this after my last live yesterday, so we'll definitely get this together. She's definitely the better expert than me. She was the one at 10x who did most of the important hires, who did all the biz dev, who was just really, really good on networking and kind of yeah, getting to go where we need to go. So she's definitely the great person there. In technical discussions, I seem less competent than I could be. How do you structure your thoughts to speak fluently when being asked technical questions? Well, first of all, I don't always speak fluently. Sometimes I stumble and stumble. Sometimes I mumble around. I guess I try to talk mostly about things where I feel I understand the topic. If I don't understand it, I will tell you that I don't have an opinion on it, or that I'm just not versed about it. Then I'm mostly the person who asks a lot of questions rather than try to answer questions. I think most people don't try to do this. I have no problems admitting that I don't know something. I think for most people, they really struggle in doing that. I have no problem. I don't know most of the things. I really don't know most of the things. I know a few things, and I try to get really deep on those. So I think that's my first advice to you. Try to really kind of know what do you know and what you don't know. And then focus on the things that you do know and learn about the things you don't know if you care about them. Yeah, and I think the other thing is just practice. The more often you're being put on the spot and you're being asked a difficult question and you have to answer it, I think the better you're going to get. I think that's my answer there. Anything else? I'm not sure if I would know anything more about that. What do you think about decentralized exchanges in comparison to centralized exchanges like Coinbase, Binance, and so on? Where's the advantage of a DEX? So I was really bullish on decentralized exchanges in 2018. I was as wrong as one could be on that. I think I completely overestimated the speed, liquidity, scalability. None of these things worked out the way it did. Again, a decentralized system is only needed if people don't trust a centralized system. That's the only reason when. There's no other reason. And so as long as centralized exchanges like Coinbase, like Binance, like Kraken, like all these other exchanges, as long as they do a good job, they don't play with people's trust, there's zero reason for people to switch to a decentralized system. And that's the same thing with anything. That's the same with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, and so on. As long as people trust the benevolent dictator, no reason to switch to a decentralized system. And I think so many people tend to forget that. A decentralized system will always be less efficient. It cannot be more efficient by definition. And I think most people don't understand that. Most people have tried to argue their way out of it because they are so stuck in this. Yeah, reminds me a bit of probably how I argued against some of my mentors a couple of years ago. At the end, yeah, the people who are on the wrong side will be on the wrong side. The facts at the end will always be the facts. So yeah, and so I think decentralized exchanges will only have a chance if centralized exchanges screw up and misplay with people's trusts, and then they could be very, very powerful. Yeah. I'm confused about all the different types of decentralized methods of proof of work or stake. Could you do a hierarchical scheme of DLT, Dangle, Lightning, and so on? Sure, I can. Actually, if you want a graphical interplace blockchain 2.0, I'll link up the book below. I'll break it down. So basically, you start with consensus. That's how it all starts. So basically, what happens, what doesn't happen. Agreement over what happened and what doesn't happen. That's like the base. The next thing is, how do you create consensus? You have two ways, either centralized or decentralized. Centralized just means you have one entity. Decentralized you have, or distributed if you want to call it, you have several entities who kind of try to establish what happens. The problem always with a distributed or decentralized consensus is that you could have complete misinformation because one person says A, the other person says B. If everyone has the same right, suddenly what's now? Is A B? Like, this doesn't work. So the next layer is basically so-called DLTs, distributed ledger technologies, or decentralized ledger technologies. And that's kind of the next layer, and that just defines how this confusion or this misinformation gets solved. In a blockchain, the way it gets solved, that randomly, based on probability, one person, part of the consensus, is allowed to say what happened. And then others check, is this information actually, is this according to the rules? And then they just copy this information. So the way this works is whoever does probability-wise the most work is more likely to win the next block. Basically can say what's the next update. And then the others check, is the block correct? Do these transactions actually exist? Yes. Then they just take over that and copy it. And as soon as 51% kind of take it over, that's when consensus is called to be created. Now, if this one person would try to cheat by saying, making a fake transaction, the others would see this and would just not copy it. But what this person could do in this update is just not integrate any new update, right? Create an empty block. And so that's how blockchains then does it. So these information blocks get chained together. Then you have other ways. You have, for example, the Tangle. And the Tangle says, not everyone has to know all the information. Everyone can work in their kind of regions. And as long as enough people trust this kind of update, then other people, even though they don't have the full information, they can also see it as a consensus, as happening, as truth. And that's enough. Obviously, there's ups and downsides with that. Upsides, really, really massive scalability. Downsides, we don't have full experience with it yet. At the moment, the system still needs to be tested in, is it going to be completely decentralized? They're testing this right now. So it is just a lot of testing. Blockchain obviously has a lot of scalability issues that it needs to solve. And then you have very experimental stuff. You have gossip and gossip protocols like the hash graph that just tries to combine a couple of things. But so now if let's stay on the blockchain side and we dig deeper there, then you could say, you know what, let's break out the entire group consensus. So let's use this as a village, for example. You're in a village and you try to establish that one person sleep with another person, right? Kind of get this little trash talking going on. So, okay, so one person can confirm that this happened and can really confirm it. The others check, can this person really confirm it? And in a blockchain, as soon as 51% of the villagers agree, then this is what happened in this village, and these two people slept with another. But so now, this works in this case, but let's say there's a lot more transactions going on, a lot more updates. Well, always the entire village has to be updated, and this is obviously slow. So what you could do is, you could have a little house, and you have two people who walk into this house. And if we use the concept of coins, then we talk about how many coins are in this village. But so now there's two people who walk into this house, and all you need to know now as an entire village is two things. Who's walking into the house, and how many coins are they taking with them? And this is basically called, on Lightning, opening a channel. So you're opening a Lightning channel from the blockchain, which is kind of the village, everyone. And they go in there. And so now they can do in there, and they can do all their transactions, and they can do updates just among themselves. No one else in the village knows about this, right? They can do this completely just by themselves. When they ever come back out, it needs to be the same kind of people, that's important, and there cannot be more coins coming back out. So that's called closing the channel. So they open the channel, two people go in, that information has to be with everyone, and how many coins are they taking with them? That has to be with them, with everyone as well. When they come back, it has to be the same kind of people, or the same kind of accounts, the same kind of participants, and it has to be the same or fewer coins than what came in. And so now what can happen is you can have the same person go into one house and into another house. And so now you could have these two houses connected by the same person. And so to the outside, these people can now work with each other because there's always an intermediary party, but the outside doesn't need to know about this. And they can always transact among each other, and they can do this at unlimited scalability, at unlimited speed, if you want to call it. And again, when people come out of the house, closing the channel, then not more coins are allowed to come out, and the same kind of people have to come out. And so that's how for the group, for the entire blockchain, there cannot be any double spend, there cannot be any cheating going on. Obviously, the challenge then is the routing, for example, in such a network. But that's definitely quite interesting, and that's basically now the second layer, if you want to call it. But in this case, it's kind of on the bottom of this entire kind of scalability thing. Great. Let me do 2, 3, and then I'm gonna finish this. Personal question, what's your biggest fear in life? It's dying. I am really, really scared of dying. Actually, it's not so much death, it's about not having left a legacy. I think that's my biggest fear. Legacy is really important to me. Are you still running after the marathon? I am. Not as much, obviously, but I am. What do you think about security token offerings for the future? I think they're a bit overhyped. I think most people completely underestimate the problems that are going to come up combining decentralization with all this legal crap around IPOs. And I think they're combining the worst out of both. A good a mentor of mine always taught me a good business model is LASIK. It has you need low margins. So like if you have high margins, it's great, but you need low margins as minimum. So L for low margins. You don't need any assets, so you don't need to buy anything. The thing is scalable. That thing is innovative. All STOs have, but the last thing is compliance. It needs no compliance, so LASIK. And STOs have such compliance struggles. And I think people are going to get slapped left and right. There's a reason on why exchange is doing these exchange token offerings right now that Binance started, and I think Bittrex wants to do it, because the route of STOs is going to be a very, very challenging one. Until there's some kind of standard, which is going to take some time, it's going to be not as easy as most people would hope it is. So I'm not the most bullish person on STOs. I would probably, if depending on how much money I would want to raise today, but let's say I would want to raise 5 million, 10 million, I would probably do an STO and sell equity through it. But I would do it in a very organized manner. Yeah, but I think many people completely underestimate the power, the struggles. What programming language makes most sense to learn from zero? I talked about that. I would learn either one of two. I would either learn Python or I would learn JavaScript. Reason is very simple. Python is a very data-driven back-end language where you can solve pretty much any problem. It's very easy to read. It's very simple. The typing is very simple. It's your progress is going to be super fast, right? That's more if you like data, if you're more the science person, if you want to go more into understanding, like for example, in blockchain, right? A lot of stuff is happening in Python. And if it's not written in Python, you're gonna be able to read most of the languages. JavaScript, on the other hand, is written for the front end. Right now, it has more and more backend with Node.js, but it's written for front end. So if it's more for you about coding an app, making interfaces, like a website or something, I would definitely go into JavaScript. Personally, I learned my very first language was C++, which then I dropped because I thought it was so ridiculous. All the memory management that just weirded the living crap out of me because it was so complex and it was all new and so difficult. And the learning curve was so steep. I was like, this just drives me insane. So I switched to Python. I think it was the best move that I'd ever done. My Python is okay. I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm definitely not a junior developer and a junior understander. Like I'm not my programming experience is quite limited, but I can read most of the code and understand what it's all about. And yeah, but if you really wanna program your own app, if that's your key kind of interest, I would probably go with JavaScript. And I know for sure that everyone has a different opinion on this. One thing I can tell you, and that's actually almost more important than anything else, is to really understand what's more important to understand than actually the language is probably the architecture and understanding algorithms. I think understanding algorithms, understanding like ways how to store data, this is almost more important than the actual language itself. Because like I remember when I speak to other technical people, I don't need to talk to them about the exact code. But what's really relevant is to understand how do they solve it this way and why would they solve it this way. And I think that's a key thing to understand. So I would probably go this route after you kind of learned a bit about coding. Yeah. Are there any CryptoFit tours planned? There's no planned, but they will definitely happen. No details on those yet, but it will definitely happen. We will definitely do it. Promise. We'll definitely do at least one tour in the DACH region. Yeah. Will we see a Julianhosp in the near future? Depending on what the near future is. If the next near future is 9 months, then no, unless Bettina is hiding a secret from me. But the next 9 months, I would say no. If you're talking about the next couple of years, then fingers crossed, I hope so. Sure. When you think back at the younger Julian, which activity would you prevent him from doing? Honestly, I would probably not prevent him from doing anything. I think I made so many mistakes in my life. I think every single mistake helped me at the end get to where I am today. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, to be honest. Yeah, the only thing, I think the only thing that I would have not prevented but would inspired him to be doing is, especially when I was before I started studying medicine and before I got into kitesurfing, focus more on personal development. I think so. My personal development came mostly when I was 23, 24, and I think those and that's when my entire kind of success curve, if you want to call it, really went up. I wish I had known about all these things when I was maybe 17 or 18. Do you follow Omisego and Plasma? Do you think Plasma will solve the scaling issue? I'm not following them enough, to be honest. It's very interesting to see how it plays out. I don't have a strong answer in it. I'm not following them enough for that. Wouldn't have a credible answer on that. Do you think that margin trading is harming cryptocurrencies, or are there any important upsides we need for margin trading? Look, you can fight that and say, oh, margin trading is bad. I don't know. I just think it's, I don't know. I just think you can discuss this left and right, but at the end, you're not going to get a good answer because it's there. And yeah, it's just there. There's nothing else that I can say. Would I want it to be gone? I mean, of course, there would be less speculation, but nothing I can do about it, to be honest. So I don't think much, or I don't worry much about things that I can't change myself. Yeah, really, I try to focus on so many other things. So I don't have a good answer to that other than, yeah, that's life. Thanks for the latest upload from South by Southwest. How about doing an event with Nurel, Rubini, Florenholm, and yourself in Zug, Switzerland? So at the moment, I'm not doing any events. Depends on when this event is. You can also write to Patricia at Julianhosp.com. I really want to get down over the next couple of weeks, get my next company started, get the next projects out. And depending on what the timeline is, if this is in the next 6 months, I'm happy to discuss this. If this is in the next 3 months, then I would probably say no. Simple reason is because for me, it's really important to get this stuff out and kind of do something. I don't see myself. Most people kind of underestimate that, but I don't see myself as a marketer, as an influencer. I really see myself as an entrepreneur. If I don't have a company or a project to brand, then I'm not so interested in doing too much branding. Yeah, but it sounds definitely like an interesting event. I mean, very, very interesting people, very critical people towards crypto. So yeah, I need to get my weapons out and kind of defend the blockchain space. I would be willing to do that. Write to Patricia at Julianhosp.com. Do you think of starting a huge real estate company using synergy effects, architect, construction tools, sales, contracts, using DLT? Real estate is corrupt. Definitely interesting. I'm staying at a friend's place here who is a humongous real estate developer in San Francisco. We discuss a lot of those things. I'm always open. I think real estate is interesting. I invest a lot in real estate myself, so yeah, and I don't think people will stop living in the next 10 years. I think they still need homes and houses over the next 20, 25 years. Even if VR is going to disrupt real estate and people only live in small little pots or beds, I think this will still take long enough until real estate goes bust. So definitely interesting. If you have something and you have some really good ideas, write to Julian at Patricia at Julianhosp.com. Great. Is there a possibility for Ripple to become a stablecoin? I mean, sure, there's a possibility. I don't own any Ripple, but yeah, you asked me about the possibility, so sure, possibility is there. I personally don't believe that possibility, otherwise I would own it. Yeah. Who is your biggest enemy? Wow, interesting question. Honestly, I never thought of this. I don't know, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know who's my biggest enemy. For sure, there's some morons on Twitter that do nothing else than whatever I tweet, they bash that. So probably these are my biggest enemies. I have no one else. I'm a very nice person, I think. Most people get along with me well. And I think it's, probably social media. I always think social media brings out the worst in people, not the best, because it either distorts a lot of things and doesn't project reality. So that's when I really need to get stuff done. You will see me less on social media, and if you need me to kind of fool around, then I spend a bit more on social media. I guess that would be my answer. Can you explain the difference between an initial exchange offering and an initial coin offering? What do you think about security token offerings? So, okay, I talked about security token offerings. ICOs is nothing else than initial coin offering with a utility token that has a utility. Obviously, it's a very gray area. Security tokens are quite clearly defined, at least I think so. It's not always easy, but it is. So it has a security character. So it has a definite expectation of financial rewards. The utility token should not have a clear expectation of financial reward. An initial exchange offering does nothing else than make an ICO on an exchange, thereby helping companies get attraction, have a platform, and do it on there. So I think IEOs are definitely going to be helpful because exchanges hopefully vet the projects. Hopefully. They have a good platform. It's attention for the exchanges. So I definitely think we're going to see a lot of these IEOs done by large exchanges. Yeah, so that's kind of the kind of separation. Initial exchange offering, initial coin offering. So an initial exchange offering is basically a subcategory of initial coin offering that's done on an exchange and not just in the wild, if you want to call it. Yeah, how to start with personal development. Start with a great book. I'm like, and I know that this is like shilling my own book, but I have no problem with this because I literally mean this. I wrote a book called 25 Stories I Would Tell My Younger Self. And I really highly recommend reading that book. It's a very easy read. It's 25 stories. And there's a lot of connections to other books in there from other great people. And it's basically the story how I got into personal development. It's the story of how I had no clue what I was going to do with my life. I was completely lost. It's the story of how I made my first $1 million with real estate and stocks, and how it started from basically the age of 4 all the way till I was 30. And it talks about those 25 stories. It talks about starting your first company, the struggles, the hurdles. It talks about relationships, how I'm not kidding, I had this ex-girlfriend that completely lied to me for 2 years, and eventually turned out that she was a fugitive looked for by the FBI. Crazy story, right? So what the hell? So it kind of, yeah, and it talks about this. So it's 25 stories I would tell my younger self. Start with this book. Great starting point. And then I linked to many other fantastic reads that I think are a good point. So start with that. In general, I think personal development, always a good starting point is always to learn from other people. Someone that you are inspired by, learn from them. I think that's always great. So let me do a quick fire round, short questions, really quick. Otherwise, I will, if it's a long question, I will just skip it. Ebooks or real paperback books, audiobooks, otherwise paperback. Do you think it's wrong to say that blockchain is the biggest invention of the internet, but Bitcoin is a scam? No, I think blockchain is huge, Bitcoin is huge. Which jobs are going to extinct in the future? Anything that is repetitive, anything that can be automated, quite simple. Creativity is going to take a long time to go extinct. But anything that doesn't take much creativity, that's easily learnable, that doesn't take much experience, many times these are the jobs that are going to go quite fast away. Also, very physical jobs, so that are physically complicated, not repetitive movements, but very physical, complex movements. For example, like a helper, like especially like a nurse getting someone in and out of a bed. They're going to take quite some time to be replaced. Do you have any explanation why Bitcoin stays weak and trading volume goes up and up? Honestly, no explanation. I really don't know. I think faking volumes are probably a bit. Why are so many people in crypto controlled by their ego and trashing each other instead of creating a future? Always the same thing. I agree with you. I think that's a huge problem. I wish people would have a bigger purpose than just pushing their ego. Completely agree. Cloud, including blockchain for the future, necessary? Definitely not necessary. It can help a few. It's not going to help most. Your next goal in sports? Next goal in sports? I would love to do. I would love to do some marathon again. Some I don't know, some training courses. Actually, my next book. That's gonna be coming out this year. Someone I want to talk about that a bit more. So that's gonna be interesting. Process of an entire ICO. Watch it on my YouTube channel. Look on YouTube. Just go on Julianhosp ICO. I lay it out so many times. So I've done this a lot. How do you differ between important and unimportant information? Long answer. Let me make a video on that. Recommend a PhD. When CryptoFit reach your groups? Good question. Let me talk to Patricia, Ewald, and the rest of the team about that. How much time do you spend on social media during the day? On a normal day, it's maybe half an hour. And on a shitty day, it's 2 hours. And on an excellent day, it's none. Thanks for your answers. Thank you. Let me close all the questions. Let me go into the chat. That was a long English one, but I kind of haven't done English in a long time, so I hope I've done everything. So I hope everyone this really helped you. I hope this is a lot of value. If it did, then please leave me a thumbs up. We'll do a couple of English ones in the future. I'll always sprinkle them in. And yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate all the support. Appreciate everything that you're doing. And yeah, I look tired because I had to talk for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Otherwise, I'm not tired. Yeah, have a good one. Have a really great Saturday. Thanks so much. Subscribe to the channel. All the links down below. Get Blockchain 2.0. That's in English. And I'll see you at the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye. And thanks to the moderators for helping. Ewald, Ruben, Bettina. Thank you so much.